Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And we have Jameson, or Jamie, here. And thank you, everybody, for the kind words after my Friday Reads video.
Thank you.
And we all got haircuts, and there was a request that we could show off the haircuts, including Jamie. She got a haircut today as well. She's looking cute. And I'm going to put her down so she doesn't end up being miserable. But there's your sneak peek at our haircuts. So we are here today to do our February reading wrap-up. February is a fun month because it is your birthday month, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you were not home for your birthday.
No, I was in Billings, work, so.
Yeah, but we celebrated anyway. It was fun. The other thing to mention before we get into our monthly wrap-up is our t-shirts. I mentioned these before. This is Flint Hills Bookstore in Council Grove, Kansas.
Yep.
We follow them on Instagram. They are lovely people.
Wonderful.
Wonderful people. We've ordered books from them as well. I have another t-shirt from them that says, read books, drink coffee, fight evil.
Yeah.
And had to get this as well when it became. We both got it. Different colors. Yeah. So if the bonfire campaign for these still exists, I will put a link to it down below because I love this t-shirt. I'm really happy to have it.
Yeah.
So
one thing Council Grove is special for me growing up in Kansas is Council Grove was halfway between my grandmother's house and our house, and they had a Dairy Queen. So we'd always stop at the Dairy Queen halfway to Grandma's house. So Council Grove was just a cute little town, and the bookstore has been really amazing and very giving back to the community a lot too. So Jennifer does a really good job there.
Yeah, and we've never actually been to the store. We've ordered from them, but we've talked to the owner on Instagram, but we have never actually been there. So I don't know when we'll ever be in Kansas again.
Don't know.
You never know. But when we are, I think a trip is in order.
And Dairy Queen.
I'm always up for Dairy Queen. Jamie loves Dairy Queen too. She does. So I actually surprisingly had a good reading month. I read 10 books in February. I know. I'm actually impressed with myself. How did you do?
I only did 6.
Yeah.
So I was working a lot, traveling a lot, and even though I was traveling, I didn't get much audio because I was flying, not driving.
Yeah.
So I just didn't get a whole lot of reading in.
And you had to spend a lot of time outside of working hours with coworkers.
Yeah.
So, that kind of put a dent in your numbers, I'm sure. Why don't I start?
Yep,
since
do it.
I have, I guess, more, and then we'll go from there. So the first book that I read in the month of February was actually His Family. I believe this was a carryover from January, but I don't remember what is time anymore. This was for my Pulitzer Prize project. In fact, as you watch this, I will have published my Pulitzer Prize deep dive on His Family at long last. I had been working on it for a while. I had a really good time exploring other books from 1917, the year this was published as well, and that was fun. So this is the first winner of the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and it was an interesting video to do because a lot of people think that he won the Pulitzer Prize because people loved a book that he had published 2 years earlier a lot. So it was a way of rewarding him for the other book through rewarding him for this book. And I'll have a link to the deep dive down below so you can watch the whole thing. And I'll keep it short and sweet for His Family right now. But that was the first book I read in February.
My first book was The North Waters by Ian McGuire. Really good book. Is an Arctic adventure on a boat, and I'm really kind of into those right now, so I'm kind of having fun with it. Wasn't one of my favorites, but it was actually really good. It was mystery and a lot going on, and I had a good time reading this one. Yeah. It's funny that Greg actually had it on his shelf, and I was like needing to read it. Yeah. And he goes, "Oh, I have that." So fun read though.
I think because when we set up the library and we have the face outs now, that was a book that I faced out, and the cover caught your attention. Right. Is that how the whole thing started? Yeah. So, but you listened to it on audio.
I did.
So, yeah. So that's actually how it started.
Yeah. It was good. I liked it.
Because of a face out. All right. My next book was actually something I listened to on audio. It's The Guncle by Stephen Rowley. This is something you read last year, and it was one of your favorite books from last year.
Yeah, right? It was. I loved it.
So I'll link our favorite books of 2022 down below as well. And I really enjoyed it. It was a perfect book for the mood I was in at the time. I guess I had avoided it for a while because it seemed like it was going to be a really fluffy book, maybe a funny book, but I guess I didn't take it very seriously, even though a lot of people were posting reviews on like Instagram or YouTube saying that they enjoyed it. So it wasn't really until you read it and liked it that I kind of took it seriously and prioritized reading it. And it is a funny book. It's a little bit fluffy in areas, but it's also very serious, a little dramatic. It deals with grief a lot and moving past grief, dealing with grief, processing grief, but it's also about family. It's a really interesting book, and I appreciated it. And it was funny.
Yeah, my stepmother read it too, and she really liked it. So we got Greg on board. So
yeah. So that was my next book.
Yeah. My next one was a buddy read with my friend Greg here, who hasn't finished.
Yeah.
But The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I've read a lot of books on the Dust Bowl and everything, and everybody said, oh, you need to do this. And my goal for 2023 is to read more literature and classics. So I got my Steinbeck in. I'm very excited. I loved it.
Yeah, and
I loved
I'm really
the writing.
liking it.
I liked the story and the characters. And so when you finish, we need to watch the movie.
We do need to watch the movie. I need to finish first, though.
But I really enjoyed the characters in here. So.
And it'd be interesting to see how they portray some of the characters in the movie. Just from you can see my bookmark. I'm only halfway through at this point. I talked in my Friday Reads video, I think, and I was talking to Joel, I think it got to a point where with everything going on with like Jamie's diagnosis and everything, I felt stressed every time I picked the book up, and I think it's because I was really hardcore taking notes. So I'm going to release myself from that obligation and just dive into the book and enjoy the book. Because I was enjoying the book. It's just that little extra bit of work is not working for me right now. So.
One of the characters I liked, and I think you said she won an Oscar, was Ma, the mother, the matriarch of the family. And I loved her character. She was quiet but strong, and she actually ran the family.
Yeah,
and I
appreciate classic literature that does, because in the beginning of the book, it almost seems like the family is convening for a council to talk about how they're going to do things, and in really subtle ways, John Steinbeck makes it very clear that Ma is actually the figure of authority, even though she acts deferential toward the men because that's sort of what's expected. Like when she goes inside to stir the soup for dinner, they stop talking and wait for her to come back. Like there's respect that they all afford her. It's a really beautiful character.
Yeah.
So
far it's my top read of the year.
Yeah.
So
I could see it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, so I just need to finish it.
Yeah.
I'll catch up to you.
I know.
Yeah, eventually.
Okay, what's next?
My next book was Games and Rituals. This is a short story collection I have an ARC of from Knopf, and I read this, and I liked it. I got really tired of it. That was that week when I think like Jamie first started getting bloody noses, and there was stress. I was tired because you were traveling, and I wasn't sleeping. So I was really cranky that week, and I got a little tired of this book fairly quickly. I think I was thinking it was me and not the book. So I did read one of the stories that I had sort of lost patience with later, and it read much better. So it was me, it was not the book. There's stories, and each one centers on like games and rituals that we create, games we play with ourselves, rituals we create to tie ourselves to other people and things like that. It's kind of an amusing book. I didn't love it, but I did like it, and it was a good read. So that is that one. What do you have?
My next one was recommended to me by my stepmother because I love T.J. Klune, and he did Under the Whispering Door.
Yeah, and
it took me a while to get into this. I love the characters. It's kind of a little bit of fantasy. It deals with death. There's a lot. It's based around death, so not really a spoiler alert, but a content alert. If you have any issues with death, this is not the book right now.
Yeah, I think for me, because I know it's so heavily, because I think it deals with death like right in the beginning, and knowing that, I have stayed away from this for the time being.
Basically, the man dies and is in between the afterlife and his past life, trying to figure things out. That's where I'll leave it. But I got into it, and the characters were really great. The writing's really good. I just wasn't see where it was going. And then, like, the last quarter of the book, it starts developing to where it's going to go. And it was absolutely a beautiful book. I loved how it ended. It was really, really kind of a special book to read too. It really hit a lot for me, and I appreciated reading it. And I think he's just a great author. So I'm going to try another one of his books too. So
we both loved The House in the Cerulean Sea. We didn't read it the same year. It was your favorite read in one of your favorite reads in 2021, and it was one of mine last year, 2022. But solid for both of us.
Because he does a lot of fantasy, and that's not really our wheelhouse. But the characters are so good that you don't mind the fantasy part because of the characters. And Under the Cerulean Sea was probably in my top 3.
I think it was.
That year.
Well, I think that was a tough year because you read 3 Benjamin Alir Sen's books.
Yeah.
So I think it was top 5.
Yeah.
I don't know where it would have been, though. Yeah.
But both are really good books.
Yeah.
So.
All right, what did I have next? Next was the first book for the Queer TBR Tackle in 2023. I'll have links to information about the Queer TBR Tackle and the E.M. Forster read-along. I missed the E.M. Forster read-along, which was supposed to be his short stories. I did not manage to do that in February. I did manage to get to Fingersmith, though. I listened to this on audio, and this I had an interesting kind of struggle with. People in the group loved this book, and I kind of thought I was alone in having some slight reservations about it. But I think Jen, the librarian, felt a little bit similar to me. She had loved it the first time around, but wasn't quite as sure the second time around. So I think I got through the first section, and there's a big twist at the end of the first section, and I thought, oh, wow, that's big. We must be getting close to the end. And I looked, and I was only 30% into the book. And I think I couldn't really articulate why that felt like such oh no to me. But I think when I watched Jen's February wrap up, it helped me because I think if that had been the novel, I probably would have been great. But when there's 70% left of a book, there are going to be a lot more twists. It's going to get more convoluted. There are going to be more betrayals and deceptions and things like that. And I think I just knew I was going to feel exhausted by that by the end. So I cheated. I went to the Wikipedia page and I read the entire plot of the book. And in a weird way, that actually helped me get through because I knew what was coming. I didn't need to go on that roller coaster and I wouldn't feel exhausted. So it just kind of helped me. It almost made the first read feel like a reread where you can see Sarah Waters laying the foundation for all of the twists and things. I don't know that all of it is 100% believable, but it is a good write. Sarah Waters has really impeccable audiobook productions as well, because I've read 2 of her books by audio, and both of them have been alarmingly good and well done. And she gets really great people to do all of the voices. The audio production is staggeringly good. And part of me wonders, I feel like the next time I read a Sarah Waters book, I should try to actually read it, because part of me wonders if I end up although I did struggle with this one, if I enjoy them as much as I do because of the audio production, or if I really like her writing. So I think the next one I'll have to try in physical book form. So that was my next book. What do you have?
My next book was staying in the classics. I read Call of the Wild last month, and I loved it. This month I read White Fang. Didn't enjoy it as much. I was just sitting here thinking why I didn't like it so much. Call of the Wild, you really were with Buck the dog, and you followed him. White Fang was more behind everything happening, and you weren't within White Fang until kind of the end. I thought the story was good. I kind of enjoyed the movie, but the book just didn't hit me on all levels that I did with Call of the Wild. So, but it's still a good book, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and you've been rocking out the classics this year so far.
Yeah.
So, yeah, doing a good job. All right, I'm going to blow through one of mine and jump to the next one, because the next book I read was actually TinTin, Prisoners of the Sun. In January, our neighbors had been telling us about how much they used to love TinTin growing up and how their son had loved TinTin when he was growing up. Their son is my age, I think. I don't know. I can't remember if one of us is a year older than the other, and I don't remember which is which. So I had read some TinTin stories when I was like 18, and I think I was a little too old because I was like, this is for kids. I'm over it. So they loaned us one book in January, and it turned out it was a two-parter. So this was the second part. They loaned it to us, and I read it, and it was fine. It's cute. I think I would have loved them if I had read them younger. Right now I appreciate them, but I don't know that I would go further in the series. I mean, it's a nice diverting way to spend like an afternoon. So that's a quick one. So the next book I read after that was Fanny Herself by Edna Ferber. And I loved that book. I did a full review of it. I'll link down below. I really enjoyed it. And I read it because I was looking at other books that were published in 1917 after I read his family. And one of the nice things about that year is that books that were published that year don't have a copyright anymore. So you can actually find copies of them online. So basically, Project Gutenberg probably has PDFs of them online. There are other sites that will have PDFs. There are people who have produced ebook versions of a lot of the books and audiobook versions of them because they are available for the public. So there's an audio that was on Scribd for Fanny Herself, and I listened to it, and I really loved it. It is the book that I think should have won a Pulitzer instead of his family. It was that good, and it has me even more excited to read Edna Ferber's book So Big, which won the Pulitzer Prize a couple of years later. And I'm really excited. I went out and found 2 hardcover books of hers at our local used bookstore because I want to read more of her work. I loved it that much. It was really good. So that was my next one.
Sweet. My next one was, as you all know, I kind of like little male romance. But the series, Jackie McMenamin suggested to us, who's a follower. And I have loved this series so much. Yeah. It is Smoke and Murders by S.C. Wynne.
And it's a Dr. Thornton?
Dr. Thornton series. And I think I'm on the 5th out of 7 of the series.
You've been going through them very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I read a chapter a night before bed, and it's just fun. But it's a murder series, and it's a small town sheriff who's gay and a small town doctor who's gay, and they've gotten together, and they're very different, but they've learned to understand each other. And so the whole series follows their relationship, but a murder happens every time somebody turns around. And the murders are fun. They are not predictable for me. And I skipped through the saucy parts, and there really isn't even that much in these. And I've really enjoyed them.
And I want to read them, but the tricky part for me is that they're on Scribd as ebooks, right?
As ebooks, yes.
And I don't tend to read ebooks. I don't know what my thing against ebooks is, because I feel like part of me wants to say I just really don't want to look at a screen anymore by the time I get to the end of the day. However, a lot of the time, if before bed I am listening to an audiobook, I'm probably still staring at my phone screen. So it can't be that. I don't know what it is. I just have this weird bugaboo about ebooks right now, and I kind of bugaboo. You've never heard that expression? No. Really? I taught Joel something today.
Well,
bugaboo. Go ahead.
Oh, so this series has been really good. I've enjoyed it. They're easy, quick reads, but they're fun. The characters are all good, and you kind of follow them.
And I think you need fun books.
Yeah.
To help power you through, especially since you're doing a lot of classics this year. I would need some fun books to mix in that.
Little spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. The next book I'm reading right now, we'll talk about in March, is Christmas themed.
Now, see, you should have opened with that. That would get me to read an ebook. Yeah. But being a completion person, I would feel like I'd need to start at the beginning anyway. But at least I have something to look forward to. So, yeah.
So that was it.
That was it. All right. I am going to do another quick 2 books. So I listened to Christmas Past, The Fascinating Stories Behind Our Favorite Holiday Traditions by Brian Earl. This was something that you listened to in December, right?
Yes.
Somewhere around there. And you liked it a lot.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And I wanted to read it. So if you don't remember, my 2022 ended with me cramming in a lot of books to finish the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge for 2022. And my December was packed with that. I barely managed to finish it in time before the year ended. So I didn't get to do a lot of the holiday books I had kind of wanted to. I got one of the holiday romances in January. So once everything started to kind of hit the fan with Jamie, I needed something fun, light, interesting, and that really fit the bill. It is based on a podcast, and I think in this case you can really tell that it's based on a podcast. And one thing I didn't like about the audio, because I really liked the book, but I'm guessing when you have like the actual book in front of you, there's a chapter and then there are little subheadings throughout the chapter, and the subheadings are sort of puns that keep getting inserted, and when you're listening to the audio, it just keeps interrupting the flow of the story for a pun. And I love a pun.
I love it.
I love a pun. He knows this. But by the end, it kind of wore me down a little bit. But that's like a minor complaint, because especially since the book is so short. And it's really interesting. And you had told me that it name dropped the town in Italy where my mother's family comes from. And still, somehow, when it got there, I was like, oh my God. I think because I knew it was going to be in there, but I didn't know when. So it still came as a surprise.
But he led up to that, like really fun. So you're getting excited. What's happening? Where are we going?
Yeah.
And Barry,
Italy. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it was kind of thrown as kind of a Christmas book, trivia book, and it's kind of the trivia behind a lot of Christmas things.
And it's interesting to get, because by now, a lot of Christmas traditions seem like they've been around forever, but they really have not. A lot of the Christmas traditions that we hold dear were sort of manufactured over the last 150 years. And it's really interesting to, like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was it Marshall Fields?
Yeah.
It was a department store story that they sent out as like a marketing blast to customers. And the guy who actually wrote it wanted to use it for, he realized the potential of it, but the Marshall Fields was just like, nah, it's fine. We're not gonna license it out or any of that stuff. And then when they decided they weren't going to use it anymore, he managed to convince them to give him the copyright back, and then he became a millionaire off of that. So it's just funny little stories like that. That's a little taste of some of the stuff in there. But then the next thing I did, I said I was going to blow past Christmas past, and we ended up talking about it, was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This was recommended by Doris from Aldi Books because, again, like part of why I listened to Christmas Past was just like I needed light things, easy things, and I was talking to Doris about options, and she had just read Legends and Lattes, and she said, you know what you need? Legends and Lattes. She was right. She crushed it, because I had resisted it a little bit because I don't read a lot of fantasy and the main character is an orc. So I was like, I don't know. But it's really cute. It's really sweet. My mother-in-law listened to it, and also she had a little bit of a struggle getting into it. But she ended up really loving it, and she thought it was very cute as well. And I know you're going to read it. We'll get to what we're going to be doing in March in a little bit, but you're going to be reading it as well. Yep, so I think you'll like it.
Yeah,
we'll see. I enjoyed it. It really fit the bill for what I needed in that time. So, what do you have?
My last book of the month was Night of the Living Rez. It was really good. I love the cover too.
I love the cover.
By Morgan Talty. And Greg really liked it. I don't know if I liked it as much, but as we talked about it, it struck me even more, and I really kind of appreciated it. And it's a kind of a lot of short stories of a Native American native growing up on the reservation.
Yeah, the Penobscot Reservation in Maine. Yeah.
And a very good book.
Yeah.
Once I finished it and I sat on it and thought about it, talked to Greg, I appreciated it a whole lot more. So it's a very good book.
I love it.
So thank you.
Yeah. It was one of my favorite reads. I can't remember where it was in my top 20.
It was up there.
It was somewhere in the top 10, I think. Yeah. I can't remember. What is time? I don't remember anything. But I liked it a lot. All right, and then I have two more, and we can get through them really quickly, because I talked about selected poems of Gwendolyn Brooks in my last Friday Reads video. I did this because on the Montana Book Company's Reading Challenge for 2023, there's a prompt to read a book of poetry by a poet you haven't read before. Erica from The Broken Spine was telling me about Gwendolyn Brooks, and it turns out she is the first Black person to win a Pulitzer in any category, and she won for poetry, obviously. So I read it, and I really appreciate her writing, but it definitely hit that weak spot of poetry for me, where I just don't feel like I understood a lot of what happened in the book. I don't feel like I understood a lot of the poems. I feel like if I had spent more time sitting with each of the poems, I probably could have unlocked some of them a little bit, but I did not do that. I liked it a lot. I very much appreciate her talent and skill as a poet, but this definitely hit that. I'm not very good with poetry, so it definitely hit that weak spot of mine as a reader. So I liked it a lot. I'm glad I read it, but I definitely feel like I didn't understand a lot. I'm not on the level of this book as a poetry reader.
I'm going to read it too, so it's for the prompt. But last year I read The Hill That We Climb.
Oh, Amanda Gorman, yes.
Gorman, yeah. And I found, I don't get poetry at all, just don't understand. But I found when I read it out loud, kind of to myself, it made a little bit more sense. And I don't know why, but that worked. But it did.
This one, I tried to do that because I rely on that as well. Because sometimes if you read it out loud, it almost starts to sound like prose, and that helps me work through it and understand it a little bit. And this one was a little resistant to that. Okay. I tried reading some of them out loud to myself, and I couldn't find the rhythm. And I think that's me, not Gwendolyn Brooks. I think it's 100% me. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when you pick it up. But that was my experience of it. And then the final book I read in the month of February, I just made it right under the wire. I finished it the last day of the month. It was Oscar Wars, A History of Hollywood in Gold, Sweat, and Tears by Michael Schulman. Which is perfect because the Oscars are coming next weekend, actually. Yeah. And, I love the Academy Awards. And I was really excited for this book because it sounded like it was going to be really fun. It ended up being a lot more dry than I had really expected. But as someone who appreciates Academy history and all of the lore that goes into it and all of the characters, like I say characters, but they're real people, I still liked it, but it was definitely more dry than what I had been expecting and what I had kind of been hoping for, to be honest. But I still enjoyed it. So that was the end of my February as well. Let's talk about... Have you finished anything in the month of March yet?
No.
Neither have I. I'm close.
Right.
Have you?
I don't think so.
I know I haven't, but I'm close on one, and I'll talk about that. So I'm finishing The Golden Spoon, which was something you recommended. Yeah. So I'll finish that. I am going to get back to The Grapes of Wrath. I'm not going to pull it out of the pile, but The Grapes of Wrath, I'm going to stop taking notes. So those are the two transitional books that are carrying me from February into March. Do you have transitional?
I do. I am going to do Legends and Lattes.
Yes.
And then it's for my reading challenge. I'm doing Catcher in the Rye, which I did not finish a few years ago. So I'm going to try it again. And then Lord of the Flies.
Yes. So you are all classics.
Classic.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what you think of them.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to do some classics, but then put in some fun fluff in between.
Yeah.
The Golden Spoon I may do.
I think you'll like it. I think you'll have fun with it. So yeah.
I'll probably do that when I'm done.
Yeah.
With these two. They're a little classic, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at The Catcher in the Rye on the shelf. I don't think it's that long.
No, it's about 7.
I don't think Lord of the Flies, I think, is not much over 200 pages, if I remember right. I could be wrong. I haven't read it in over 20 years. But I remember really liking it. So we'll see. And then in the rest of March, so the E.M. Forster read-along is going to be doing the book The Longest Journey. So I am going to be reading that. I was hoping that I would manage to read The Netanyahus by Joshua Cohen this month, because I may push that to April, because I have a lot of library books that I need to try to work through as well. So I may focus on them and push the Netanyahus to April, because the Pulitzer announcement is going to be in May. So I was going to try to do it this month. They usually do it in April, so that was why my timing was working that way. But I think I'm just going to push it. I'll focus on the library books, finishing The Grapes of Wrath, and then, April, I'll think about the Netanyahus. And that's sort of my plan for March. Was there anything else in your reading plan for the month of March?
I'm not going to plan anything until I get there, depending what my feelings are on reading, because by the time I get done to the two classics I'm doing now, we'll probably be going to
WSU.
Take Jamie to the college for her procedure. So probably something very light and fluffy and fun.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. Like we don't know what that week is going to look like, so hard to plan. If we might not be in the mood to read it all. Yeah. We're going to wait and see. So I think it's better to keep plans loose for that. But yeah. Anything else about February?
No, I don't think so.
Or just in general?
No.
I think that pretty much covers it. Looking forward to... Well, we're already in March.
Yeah.
So I was going to say we're looking forward to it, but we're already here. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll be back. And maybe, depending how long we stay in WSU, maybe we'll get you back earlier than the March reading wrap-up.
Maybe.
We'll see. Nothing. We don't know anything that's coming. We'll find out. But as always, we really appreciate your time, and we will be back. Until next time, happy reading.
Bye.